the reason that I'm here is because, the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 200. Holy crap. A big round number for the Tottenham Depot. Cracking a beer to celebrate with you all here on this fine Sunday. Wow, we've done it. We've done 200 episodes, guys. This is incredible. I've got Todd alongside at TC_Kasho. TC, what is up, my man? Happy 200 to you.
Happy 200. We need the horn drop right there. Yeah, you got it. No, man, any day that you can record 200 episodes of a podcast about Tottenham is a good fucking day. So I can't complain about being here, and certainly excited to chat with y'all.
It is that. Caroline is also with us. She is at CG Stefco. Caroline, happy 200 to you.
Why, thank you. I'm, obviously thrilled to be on this podcast as ever. I wish we had a better game to talk about for our 200th episode, but we'll find some silver linings, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're going to try to. We do have a game to discuss for sure. Spurs Women, not great. We'll get into it. We will get into it. Scott is also with us. He is at Scott G. Bird. I know Scott has been celebrating this week by watching Mauricio Pochettino take over his beloved U.S. men's national team. How are you getting on with that, Scott?
Yeah, as Caroline said, a tough result for Spurs this morning, but in non-Spurs sports for me, Iowa State is now 6-0 after a big one last night, and I got to watch, as you said, Mauricio Pochettino manage a football team that I support, which was just a wonderful experience. And 200 episodes, 200 times that I've talked to you guys over a podcast, and I was thinking about that, and it made me realize that I guess my closest group of friends is people in a WhatsApp chat. But that's the world we live in, right? So, happy to be here with you all as always, and let's get into it.
And we are happy to have the listeners here for all 200 episodes. Shout out to the listeners. We wouldn't keep doing this thing if literally no one was listening. So we want to keep that up. As a 200th episode gift to us, the Tottenham Depot, feel free to share the podcast. Give us a like on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Share all the episodes. Share the content that we're putting out with your friends so we can continue to grow the Depot a little bit bigger. The socials, all of them at Tottenham Depot. So go follow us there. Also want to tell everyone that we are delighted to be partnered up with Digital Spurs. Digital Spurs is artwork put to your favorite apparel done by Danny Garrison. He creates these pieces, hats. We've got hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, all kinds of different stuff. You see us rocking it if you're watching the YouTube channel all the time. So keep an eye out later this year for a special promotion we're going to be doing with Digital Spurs as well. Head on over to digitalspurs.com and find some of your new favorite Spurs merch or other merch. He's got NFL merch. He's got all kinds of different stuff as well that he's got over on digitalspurs.com. Caroline brought it up. We do have a game to discuss. Spurs Women went up to Man United, and they're going to get the spotlight this week because that's really all there is to talk about. It's such a gift for our 200th episode that there is minimal Spurs news to talk about, but a game that did not go according to plan. And I know for those who did not get up, this game was on super duper early for those of us here in the States. I'm talking 4:30 a.m. for your boy here who was up and did watch it, but was not pleased with what he saw. A 3-0 defeat. And Caroline, I know you were also up for this and watching this. This didn't really feel deserved almost. This didn't feel like a 3-0 defeat, but also it's kind of just the kick in the teeth that I think Spurs would have almost expected to get. But they played better than that, right?
Yeah, I think it feels like an expected loss against United because this just tends to be what happens when we play this team. They're as close as we have to a bogey team on the women's side, I would say. But I agree. I don't think a loss of that heavy of a score line was deserved. You know, the first like 40 minutes or so were actually really, really strong from the team. And actually, first I have to like rewind to just talk about the starting lineup because I felt like it was an overperformance in that context because we were missing quite a few players who have been, you know, regular starters so far this season. We found out Maite Ross was going to be out for several weeks, which is a massive blow, I would say. Haley Rosso, she was taking a lot of knocks in the last game. She was out. And Amanda Nilden, who also has been just absolutely battling through the start to the season and been really important, I would say, too. She was out today. And as a more minor note, we still have yet to see Ella Morris play for the club in a competitive fixture because of her kind of lingering preseason injury. So that's just kind of disappointing in the general sense. Really would like to see what she can do soon. But yeah, so we knew we were going to be coming into this game with not an ideal, you know, lineup. We didn't have a full bench even, 2 goalkeepers on the bench. And actually ironic that I've been, you know, sort of not complaining about Becky Spencer the last few weeks, but having some doubts about her current form. And I actually thought she played really well today and was one of our best players despite that heavy score line because she made some really great saves and looked really sharp, I would say, like in her distribution and her sort of positioning as well. So there, yeah, it was. I'm going to let somebody else come in because I just feel so frustrated by the fact that we played so well and didn't score a goal in that opening half. And then it just all fell apart, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the chances were there. And I mean, like I said, I would say, and you said it, about 40 minutes, right? Like until the goals came for United, Spurs really outplayed. And if you look at some of the stats, some of the underlying stats, some of the momentum stats, like they all kind of favor Spurs. Spurs had more of the ball. Spurs had a 10-3 corner advantage in this match. They were putting the ball in the box. There just was not that little last gasp, and United made them pay. I do want to talk about we talk a lot about Beth England, and we talked about like can she and Martha Thomas play on the pitch at the same time together. I thought we saw a lot of that in quality in this match, and again, there's nothing to show for it, but that was encouraging for me. And then honestly, I just thought the midfield without Oroz, who has really been like the straw that stirs the drink. I was trying to get that out of my mouth there. The straw that stirs the drink. That's hard to say. That was a big miss. And obviously Robert Villahamn said it's one of I believe his quote was they have some big injuries and they have some little injuries, and hers is one of the big injuries. She is going to miss a number of weeks, they say, and that's kind of backbreaking a little bit because we've talked about like the midfield options that this team has, but they're very unproven still, and getting them to gel together, they had already started to with Oroz, you know, kind of playing that role of the attacker and the one who can move the ball through the midfield despite her small frame, and like she's been really doing work. Let's kind of double click on Oroz before we move to the pain that was watching Man United do this to Spurs. Like that's going to be a really, really tough one to get through over the next, whatever a number of weeks means, right?
I think so. You know, I think Drew was really playing in more of that attacking midfielder role in this game. And she, obviously in the first half only, did a really great job. But I just have concerns about needing her to play full 90s at this point in her career. You know, I feel like we need to be really careful about how we're managing her minutes, you know, just being realistic. And the only other really kind of creative player that we have in the squad is Wang Shuang, and she's been out with an injury, you know, also from the preseason, and we haven't even gotten to see her on the pitch yet for this campaign. So I think it's going to be tough to be missing her for a few weeks. We do have like an international break coming up after the next game. So, you know, a few weeks is really vague. We don't know how many games she's going to end up missing, but it could be tough. And honestly, at this point, we just need some of the other players to step up, and it'll be interesting to see who kind of takes that on and, you know, provides the creativity that we're going to be missing otherwise.
Yeah. I mean,
Scott.
Yeah. in the first half here, I'm watching the game as we record. Spurs are absolutely suffocating them, and we talked about that a little bit off air. But I think when we look at all the injuries and the way they are compounding, if we look at least the first half again, which I've just watched, I think there's every reason to be hopeful that we can get through it. Beth came on in her interview after the match and said, simple as it was, we didn't take our chances, United did, and that's the way it fell. And soccer is really the only sport where you can be the better team for an entire game and not win, right? It's pretty rare that happens in any other sport, at least in the first half, right? Maybe I shouldn't say the whole game, but ultimately, I think it really feels like a game in which we could have easily won today. We didn't. We got to take our chances, and it probably just stings a little bit more than is the severity of any situation. So.
That's a really fair point.
I think a reason that it stings so badly is because when you look across the pitch and realize that the two of maybe the best 4 players on the pitch were Grace Clinton and Celine Bizet. And that's kind of what makes this entire thing
for sure.
Just more painful. Bizet had 2 assists. Both the first 2 goals came on beautiful crosses off of her foot. And that sucks. Like, there's no other way to put it. That sucks seeing that happen. That's kind of, I think, where a lot of this quote unquote pain, and it's not quote unquote, it's pain is derived from for this one. It's the lack of taking chances, which I feel like we've heard a little bit of that in some other matches on the men's side as well. Like the vibes are all there, the flow of play is there. It's just you've got to execute when you're playing this kind of football, this kind of attacking style.
Yeah, and I mean, we're carving through their press. Yeah, we're carving through their press. We're putting ourselves in really good positions. 18th minute, roughly, I remember Jess Naz could have squared one easily to I believe Bethany, and just hesitated, and it was just that kind of day, I think, for the ladies. But it's just tough. But like Caroline said, when it's United and when you could get a result against a team like that, especially. I think some of the FA Cup is still lingering, right, going into this match probably for fans. So, there's reasons why it feels worse than it actually is. But, it's only 3 points. So anyways, I'm just rambling, but we'll get through it for sure. I'm confident of that.
Well, to Andrew's earlier point about, Beth and Martha playing together, I do think this might have been the best we have actually seen them link up in the entire time that Martha has been with the team. I wish it could have been sustained a little more throughout the game, but at least we saw some evidence that it can work, which I don't feel like we really had up until this point. And the thing about, Celine providing both of the assists, we had Charlie Grant starting at left fullback. This was her first start of the season. And honestly, she's really not had a ton of game time since she joined in January period. So I think that was really just a case where her limitations as a fullback, like in terms of being much more attacking than defensive, were really on display. So that was unfortunate. And it just hurts more because it's Celine, we all, I think, still feel a little bad about that transfer and how it went down. And to be fair, Grace Clinton was really heavily involved in the goals too. So it's one that we just kind of have to stomach and accept, but it's not easy.
Caroline, you mentioned it. Next week is Chelsea, and obviously that doesn't make things any easier. A trip to Kingsmeadow, and like Chelsea are obviously still really, really good. They're perfect so far this season through their 3 matches. They obviously had that one postponement, so they've only played 3 times, but they're still right at the top of the table, kind of where we expect them to be despite the managerial change there. Do you worry at all about potentially going into an international break with 3 defeats on the bounce now, and like this thing kind of, because it's still really early. Like, I want to caveat everything, but like this has the potential to get away from them here if they're not careful. Because it's only 4 points from 4 matches in the league. Obviously, there was the League Cup win as well, but there's not been a lot of momentum carried from everything that happened last season. And despite bringing in some new players and them looking bright, now with the injury bug, do you worry at all about this thing kind of sliding off the rails a little bit?
I mean, it's tough from the perspective of the new signings and that we've barely gotten to see them. And with Maite, we're not going to see her for a while. So that's just tough. I do think Chelsea is probably the best opponent we could have coming up in the sense that it's always seen as a free hit. They're the 5-time champions. Realistically, nobody is expecting us to win this game. That being said, we tend to play really well against them. I don't know why that is. We just have matched up with them pretty well in previous seasons and had some really close score lines, and I think we don't have that same kind of mental block when it comes to playing them like we have with United. So we could, there's always potential for a surprise, but at the same time, I don't think anyone's going to be pointing fingers at Spurs after a loss to Chelsea and being like, oh, Spurs are in crisis. Like, it happens. Yeah. And the other thing too is that we're fortunate that the other results this weekend kind of went in our favor. Obviously not great that United beat us and they got the points, but we saw, I think it was a draw from Aston Villa. Liverpool had a last minute basically lost to Man City thanks to Bunny Shaw.
What a goal that was, by the way. Holy crap.
Player, I'll just say.
Holy crap, what a goal.
It was so good. Yeah.
She's being dragged and just like, that was, I was seeing the highlights. I was seeing highlights of that goal from like non-football people today on a
so
Sunday.
Good it was. Yeah.
Like it was an incredible goal from Bunny Shaw.
She's probably going to win the Golden Boot, and I'm already regretting my Golden Boot prediction from my other podcast, but that's another matter.
Yeah.
But also Arsenal lost. So, we're actually in a pretty decent spot in the table, just 1 point below Arsenal. And it could be worse, is basically what I'm trying to say. And then we've got the international break to regroup. And on the other side of that, we have West Ham, who I don't want to say is a guaranteed win, but it's a game that we should win.
Should be. But that's the thing. It's getting to the point where we should start discussing things like that, as that should be 3 points.
Well, I agree, but at the same time, I was just thinking about this before you said it. There is no easy game in this league at all. I mean, the men do maybe come across a game. Actually, I shouldn't say that at all either, right? The men have been known to not turn up in those types of, strongly favored win scenarios. But in the Women's Super League, especially, there's just not an easy game. It's a very compact league. And so, yeah, we got Chelsea, then we got West Ham. But I think my point is the women have a lot to do with everything they're up against. And, we're comfortably maybe the 5th or 6th best team in the league on paper, right? And I think we're getting better for sure. I know we're working hard to climb that table. But when you're in that world in such a compact, just stacked league, it's going to be tough going all the time. So, again, I have no issues considering or thinking that we'll get it figured out, but it just, every match is going to be tough.
It is that. One more match before the international break side on the women's side of things. The men, however, coming out of an international break, and we just got news into the Tottenham Depot news department that all of a sudden "back soon" is like the new phrase. If you're not watching us on the YouTube channel, Heung-min Son posting on Instagram earlier today a lovely photo of himself. I don't know if this is like Gatorade SpawnCon. I don't think it is, but there's definitely some heavily prominent Gatorade logos in the photo. But it's the captioned "back soon." So Heung-min Son potentially on his way back to the field for the men. Paul O'Keefe had a tweet earlier in the week that said, there's hope that both Son, Richarlison, and maybe even Wilson Odegaard could be returning to training this week for Spurs. So I do like the sound of that. Spurs are, of course, getting set to face West Ham on Saturday and trying to get themselves back and healthy. And I guess as we kind of look a little bit ahead to, like, obviously a really big game following, what happened against Brighton last time out, Todd, but a London derby is always big against these guys, right?
Yeah, little brother has been a little more mouthy in the last few years than we particularly like them to be. So, giving them a sound walloping would cure a lot of ills on the Spurs side right now. basically, if we can replicate the first half against Brighton for 2 halves, that'd be great. We'll certainly take that.
Yeah, no question about that. And then following that match, it's back into the Europa League for Spurs men. But how are we feeling? We're not quite 20% of the way into the season on the men's side yet. Like I was looking, I know it's like we talked about a little bit of a check-in on the women after this defeat, and it's still really early in that season. On the men's side, we're starting to see a chunk of matches now, and we're also removed now a little bit from that Brighton debacle last week to where we can start to regroup and look forward. Caroline, how are you feeling about the men's team right now? Are you still kind of hopeful? And now with looking at some of this health potentially and some of these bodies getting back, especially from a frontline standpoint, are you feeling positive coming out of this break?
I think so. Yeah, because we at least have attacking players who are in good form, and I think that's going to help us a lot. The defense, I don't know. I don't want to like totally buy into this narrative about, should we be worried about Christian Romero? I might have a little worry.
There has been a little bit of that this week, hasn't there?
And we'll see how he comes back from Argentina, because that's always kind of a weird thing with him in terms of his focus level, I guess. But I said on the last pod, I was ready to write off that Brighton result and just look forward, because I really think it was pretty uncharacteristic of this team this season in terms of like the just complete across the board collapse. I don't think we had really seen that. So yeah, I think we're going to be okay. And as long as Brennan Johnson keeps scoring, he seems pretty unstoppable at the moment. So that's something to be optimistic about.
Yeah, didn't he score for Wales this week again?
He sure did.
He's just
and apparently Dragushin got his first ever international goal. So we never turn down a defender scoring, of course.
No, we just like them to stay on the pitch for a full 90 minutes, and that's my last memory of him is him not doing that. So would like to get that worked out. Scotty, what about you? How you feeling about, because I guess of all the Tottenham Depot people, you've been a little bit down on the start to this season overall, but like still knowing that this is a long process. What are you feeling coming out of this international break, especially following what was, pretty bad against Brighton in that second half?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the perspective of the league, for example, I do think we stumbled a few more times than we should, and that Brighton one definitely doesn't help the situation. But I still think there's a lot to be hopeful for, especially in the realm of cups that we're in, right? The Europa League for sure. So I think maybe what I'm trying to say is the league form has frustrated me a little bit, and it's really just been because of earlier in the season us not taking our chances and putting us in a situation where we've dropped points, and then against Brighton just a lapse in focus and concentration leads to drop points. And we play in a league where you just can't drop points. The stakes are too high each and every week, but we can use the lessons learned from the ups and downs of the Premier League competition to shore up our cup runs in a lot of different ways. And if we can finish, 4th through 6th and again, battle for cups, I'll be very happy. And again, we're not looking big picture here, but all that to say, I just really want us to come in against West Ham and bounce back and play a good game and get a result. I think that's the best thing that can happen for our season, because as we know in England, with more drop points, things compound. The media gets involved. They stir shit up. And I just don't want to see Spurs in that situation right now. So, big one against West Ham.
TC, I feel like Scott's throwing red meat on the table for you there.
No, ultimately he came around to the point that I think all of us are trying to make. Like, there's obviously we don't want to even talk about what a result like that would end up being against West Ham. So just staying positive here, Coach. We got a lot of stuff to focus on going forward.
I agree. Like, I'm trying to be calm, trying to the Romero stuff from this week. The Romero stuff, all it did for me was it made me take a pause and think about having watched Christian Romero this season and be like, okay, I see a point, but like players go through stretches where they struggle a little bit. I don't think it means that Christian Romero is washed by any stretch. I don't think it means that he's bad all of a sudden. Like, I think he's maybe had a couple of tough games, and honestly, like the second half against Brighton was his worst 45 minutes I think he's maybe played for Tottenham, which says a lot because there haven't been a lot of those. There haven't been a lot of those stretches. Like, he has enough equity built in with me where if you're going to put in a performance like that, I'm not going to be pleased by it, but it makes it a lot easier to brush off when you see players who don't put in consistent performances like he does on a week-to-week basis, like when they have a rough one. And players sometimes have rough ones. That happens.
Well, same with Destiny, honestly. You know, it's the same situation. He had a bad game, but I don't think he's a bad player. I'm not worried about him in the long term.
And with Destiny, I think there's still an understanding that he's returning from injury. Like, he's returning from the summer and from last season, and I don't think he's fully gotten up to fitness, which I'll continue to beat the drum about. That's why it's so bizarre that they don't have Jed Spence on the Europa League team, because it's just going to mean more minutes for Destiny. And I still don't understand. I'm going to, like, every time I get the chance to beat the drum about what a puzzling decision it was to take Fraser Forster on that roster instead of Jed Spence, like, I will continue to pound that drum. That's going to just be my, like, calling card for the season, especially if, you know, shit goes more awry than it already has in that respect.
But again, he does have the ability to right that wrong for everybody at home when they, you know, once, you know, assuming we make it to the knockout rounds of this competition, he has the ability to sort out a squad with more teeth. We'll say it that way. The other thing is if you look at the amount of minutes that Romero's played over the course of the last few weeks for us, we don't know what type of injury scenario he may be dealing with. You know, how much tread came off those tires. That's the other thing that we got to think about with that guy. He plays a lot of meaningful minutes all year long. So, to say anything other than he shit the bed in the second half of the Brighton match would be a lie. He did. It was rough to watch. But I can't say that going forward we make our best 11 without him. So, I think we just kind of got to back our guy and hope that he can get, you know, get fit and get ready, healthy, ready to rock and roll.
And not that we're doing a
spammer up. I don't know.
Now that we're not we're not going to do a full redux on the Brighton match, because who would want to relive that? But like the two names we mentioned aren't the only ones at fault. Like, Mickey Van de Ven had issues. Pedro Porro had issues defensively. The midfield wasn't great. Like, there's, like, names can be thrown out as culprits, and like everyone ultimately is to blame, and the head coach is ultimately to blame because he's got to have those guys rip roaring and ready to go too.
Yeah, I also think we forget this because we're probably a better team than our average age, but we're still a young team, and we've shown even Mickey Van de Ven's young. I forget that myself quite easily. I think he's 22, 23, if I'm not mistaken. So. Anyways, 23. I mean, still very young, and the way that he's discussed in the media, you know, he's one of the best defenders in the league in the eyes of plenty of reputable folks, and he's 23 years old. So anyways, all that to say, we're young teams will let shit like that happen, like what happened against Brighton. That's what a young team will do, right? And as it matures, those kind of things won't happen. But the fact that for such a young team, we've beaten the pants off teams like United, for example, right? Most recently, this will continue to trend upwards for sure. And again, Brighton's shit, but or the result is shit, but those are the kind of things that will certainly work out again as we mature as a squad. So.
No question about it. Guys, there's really only one other like news item from the week that I had on our agenda to discuss, and based on the lack of, it's weird. Like, I'll give people a little peek behind the curtain here. You know, we have a WhatsApp chat among the podcast here, and normally during a men's international break, it goes a little quiet. Like, we're still paying attention to the women, but there was only the one game to talk about for that this week. And unfortunately, we all, you know, we're a little bit like not looking forward to it for a good reason. But the Ryan Mason flirting with the Anderlecht job did not even like get into the group chat until it was pretty much already done being a story. And it like missed me because I definitely had checked out of like Spurs Twitter for the week. I I was not involved or not really paying much attention to Spursy news all week. And by the time this news like got under my nose, he had already, basically said he's not going to take the Anderlecht job. But I'm curious as to what you guys think about this, because I know Ryan Mason's been, a part of this Tottenham support staff and a part of multiple managers now. And I think we all believe that he will eventually get a managerial job. And this kind of almost seemed like it happened this week, but then just didn't. Anderlecht ended up staying in-house, hiring David Hubert as their coach on Thursday. But they had an opening. Mason apparently thought about it, and there were talks, but decided he's not going to take that job, and he's going to stay at Spurs right now. TC, what's your thoughts on this? You're probably Ryan Mason's probably more in your fandom zone than most of us. Like, what do you like about this?
I love Ryan Mason as a guy. I mean, this is somebody who came to the academy with Harry Kane. Like, this is somebody who Poch gave his first team debut to, or at least he saw the majority of his minutes in a Spurs kit under Poch. Obviously we all know why and how Ryan Mason's career ended, and that was a tough situation. But he his time as a player at Spurs had gone at that point in time. However, he's still Spurs through and through. And when he was battling back from his situation, the club and shout to Daniel for this. The club kind of came to him and said, "Hey, listen, we're not really sure what's next for you, but you always have a home here." And Ryan really took that and ran with it. And, just kind of came through, started earning his badges, and started making himself an invaluable part of the coaching staff. So much so that he survived, 4 different managers now in the ranks as a coach for Tottenham. So you look at that and you go, he's obviously got to be doing something right in order to make it, through working with those guys. When I saw the news hit the Twitter, I said, yeah, I mean, yeah, that seems like a solid move for him. The fact that he chose to stay said that the money wasn't right to me. I think that's ultimately what it boiled down to. It was either money or control. Something wasn't right on personal terms in order for him to go, I'm going to keep it where it is. So we don't know what that is. What we do know is that there's no reason to think that Ryan Mason won't have a managerial job by this time next year. So shout out to Ryan, keep doing your thing. And, anything that you can do to help us win for the time being, please do so.
I always have to remind myself how damn young Ryan Mason still is. He is 33 years old. He's only 2 years older than Ben Davis. Like, that is like, it jars me sometimes to try and remember how young this guy still is. And there's still so much time. Caroline, what was your thoughts when you saw this news this week?
Well, just in terms of, Todd referencing maybe the control wasn't there for that role. I'm glad he did not take this opportunity. It's not that I don't think he's ready for a head coaching job, but I would really like to see him go somewhere at the beginning of a season and actually get the opportunity to be involved with like transfer discussions, because, both times he was interim manager at Spurs, he was really dealt a difficult hand in terms of, not having any leeway with like making squad changes, just having to work with what he had. So I would like him to have an opportunity where he can really start it out, feeling comfortable with the situation he's going into.
Yeah, that's a great point. Without a doubt, walking into a situation where he's expected to turn something around is a really good way to get your career started off on a very poor foot. So I think it's smart. I was bummed in the sense that I just really want to see him earn his flowers, and I think Anderlecht would have been a club where you have a good shot at competing for your league, right? And if you win a couple of trophies and prove yourself a capable manager in Belgium, you probably earn an opportunity elsewhere. So in that sense, I was just eager to see him take a prominent role in Europe, right? But looking back, I think the decision to stay with Postecoglou, whatever the reason was correct. And I think Postecoglou is definitely stepping into the realm of people, what people consider to be the top tier of managers, especially with regards to tactical impacts that they're making on the sport, right? He's kind of like revitalizing and intriguing a lot of people, maybe is the word, right? So I think as Postecoglou continues to cement himself in that world, you expect or assume that some sort of quote unquote tree is going to come off Postecoglou, right? As it did with Pep, as it did with Jose, as it did with Klopp, right? I think Ange could be that next guy. So I think it's wise for Ryan to align himself to Postecoglou as long as he can as well.
It's interesting. I was definitely, when I read about it, I realized, oh, that would have meant Ryan Mason coaching 4 years his senior Jan Vertonghen. Like that would have been really, really something to watch. The former teammates just doing it that way. Like that would have been super wild. But yeah, not to be. And Mason's gonna stay on the Spurs bench, so he can continue to help out with the set pieces, which have been better this year, but still a little bit of room for growth there as well. That's all I got this week, guys, for the Tottenham Depot. Unless there's any other shout outs we needed to make or anything, anybody had anything else to get off their chest. But it's the 200th episode. We're going to keep it short for you guys this week. We're going to go celebrate. Caroline, you had something else?
This is a small thing, but on the Inside Spurs program, on Spurs Play, they did an interview with Molly Bartrip about mental health, which I think is well worth watching. Always like to hear her talk about that topic because it's something she's really passionate about, and I think she has some good advice in it. So check it out.
Awesome. I love that. I love that a lot. I will definitely be checking that. I was unaware of that. So thank you for informing me of it. That is going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot, our 200th. Thanks again for all the listeners for listening to 200 freaking episodes of the Tottenham Depot. That is so awesome. We are happy to do it every week. We have a ball. And as Scott said, we've all become friends through doing this. So that's kind of the beauty of it. And, we love doing it, and we love interacting with the listeners. If you want to be one of those interacting listeners, find us on social media at Tottenham Depot. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all the fun places. And be sure to go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot, and subscribe there. We are posting all the videos up as all the podcasts up as videos every week on our YouTube page. For Caroline at CG Stefko, for Scott at Scott G. Bird, Todd is at TC_Kasho. I can be found at A Stedka. And again, follow us at Tottenham Depot. Until next week, this has been that Tottenham Depot 200 episodes. As always, come on, you Spurs.